Okinawa before karate, the cradle of an art born in the shadows. Long before the world knew the word karate, before the white kimonos, the colored belts, and the modern competitions, there was a small chain of islands in the far south of Japan that possessed its own identity, distinct from the power of the Japanese Empire. These islands formed the Ryukyu Kingdom, now known as Okinawa, a territory that would become, centuries later, the silent cradle of one of the most influential martial arts in history. The Ryukyu Kingdom was not originally Japanese. Culturally, politically, and even linguistically, Okinawa possessed unique characteristics, a direct result of its strategic geographic location between China, Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia. Since at least the 12th century, the Ryukyu Islands have served as an important maritime trading hub, connecting trade routes between Ming Dynasty China, feudal Japan, and Southeast Asian kingdoms such as Siam and Java. This intense trade involved not only goods, ideas, religions, customs, and above all, combat techniques circulated freely through the ports of Okinawa. Warriors, emissaries, merchants, and monks brought with them knowledge that went far beyond economics. In the 14th century, the Ryukyu Kingdom was officially unified under King Shohashi, R. 1422-1439, establishing a centralized monarchy. This period marked the beginning of a policy that would be decisive for the future of local martial arts: the prohibition of carrying weapons. Fearing internal revolts and seeking to maintain political stability, the ruling elite of Ryukyu imposed severe restrictions on the use of swords, spears, and other traditional weapons. This policy was further reinforced in the 17th century, when the kingdom was invaded by the Japanese Satsuma clan in 1609. Although Ryukyu continued to formally exist as a tributary kingdom of China, in practice, it came under Japanese control. The invasion of Satsuma further intensified control over the local population. Weapons were confiscated, surveillance increased, and any sign of rebellion was severely punished. This context of repression created an urgent need: how to defend oneself without weapons, without drawing attention, without being seen. It is in this environment that what would later be known as karate began to take shape. But at this early stage, the art was not yet called karate. The inhabitants of Okinawa practiced rudimentary forms of combat known simply as te, which means hand. Te was not a unified system. It was a set of practices transmitted orally, from master to disciple, often within families or small social circles. These practices varied by region. The three main cities of Okinawa, Shuri, Naha, and Tomari, developed their own combat characteristics, influenced by both the social environment and the external contacts each maintained. These variations would later give rise to distinct schools of thought, but at that historical moment, they were still merely local methods of survival. Another fundamental element in the birth of karate was the close relationship between Okinawa and China. Since the 14th century, Chinese emissaries known as the 36 families were sent to Okinawa, settling permanently in the Kumamura region near Naha. These Chinese brought with them not only Confucian administration and culture, but also Quan Fa practices, the Chinese martial arts. These Chinese systems, based on direct strikes, structured postures, breath control, and efficient use of the body, exerted a profound influence on the local Ti. However, this influence was not a simple copy. The Okinawans adapted foreign knowledge to their reality: confined spaces, lack of weapons, and the need to quickly neutralize an aggressor. Unlike the Japanese martial arts of the time, which were deeply linked to the samurai class in the battlefield, the embryo of karate was born among civil servants, merchants, palace guards, and members of the local nobility, known as pechin. These people needed to protect themselves, maintain order, and survive, all without violating the laws imposed by the occupiers. Another decisive factor was secrecy. The training was not public. There were no gyms, there were no uniforms. The techniques were practiced at night, in enclosed courtyards, backyards, or even inside houses. The movements were repeated silently, often disguised as ordinary physical exercises. That is why, unlike other martial arts, karate developed with an extreme focus on efficiency, direct impact, and quick finishing. Every move had to be effective. There was no room for unnecessary movements or exaggerated aesthetics. In that early period, there were no ranks, gradings, or formal names for the styles. Knowledge was too precious to be widely disseminated. A mistake could cost freedom or life. Thus, karate was born not as a sport, nor as a philosophy, but as a silent response to oppression. An art form shaped by necessity, fear, and the strategic intelligence of a people who learned to transform their own bodies into weapons. By the end of this chapter, it becomes clear that karate did not originate from a single master at a single historical moment. It is the result of centuries of adaptation, cultural resistance, and exchange between civilizations. Before it had a name, before it had a form, karate already existed, hidden in the empty hands of Okinawa. Chinese influence, Quan Fa, and the birth of Tao De. The relationship between Okinawa and China was the most decisive factor in the technical development of karate. Since the 14th century, the Ryukyu Kingdom maintained a direct tributary relationship with the Ming Dynasty, 1368-1644, sending tribute and receiving Chinese imperial emissaries. These emissaries were not just diplomats, many were scholars, military personnel, and experienced practitioners of the Chinese martial arts known as Quan Fa. The Chinese families who settled in Kumimura became an intellectual and cultural center. It was there that Chinese knowledge mixed with the local Te, giving rise to what came to be called Tode, Tang Shou, literally Chinese hand. Among the systems that most influenced Okinawa were styles from southern China, especially Fujian, such as Bai He Quan, White Crane Fist, Southern Shaolin styles, and systems based on breath and grounding. These styles emphasized short, direct strikes, body structure use of the hip-breath control, ibuki, internal power transmission. Todi was not a faithful copy of these styles. The Okinawans simplified, adapted, and made the system brutally practical. The fighting needed to take place in small spaces, against armed or physically superior opponents. Over time, Todi evolved regionally, giving rise to three major branches. Shurite, developed near the royal palace, practiced by members of the nobility. It was characterized by quick movements, linear displacements, and explosive strikes. Main figure, Sokan Matsumura, 1809-1899, bodyguard of the Ryukyu kings and student of Chinese masters. Nahate, heavily influenced by China, he focused on breathing, inner strength, and close quarters combat. Key figure, Kanryo Higana, 1853-1915, who studied directly in Fujian. Domarite, a blend of both approaches, practiced by guards and merchants. Less documented, but crucial for technical development. These three routes were not closed styles, but transmission lines that would later give rise to modern styles. Without books or written records, karate survived through kata. Each kata was a codified manual of real combat containing self-defense techniques, deadly attack strategies against multiple opponents, using the body as a weapon. Kata such as Sanchin, Seisan, Pasai, Kanku, and Kusanku have clear Chinese roots and have been adapted over generations. Training in kata was training for survival. The watershed moment in the history of karate was Gichin Funakoshi, 1868-1957. A student of Anko Itosu and Anko Azato, Funakoshi was invited in 1922 to demonstrate karate in Tokyo during a national martial arts exhibition. The impact was immediate. To make art acceptable in Japan, Funakoshi made strategic changes. He changed the ideogram for Chinese hand to empty hand, Kong Shou. He introduced uniforms and ranks. He adapted the teaching methods for schools and universities, and thus modern karate was born. With the expansion of karate in Japan, formal styles emerged. Shotokan, Goju-ryu, Shito-ryu, Wado-ryu, Kyokushin. Each style preserved one of the roots of Okinawa, with technical and philosophical variations. During World War II, Okinawa was devastated. Masters died, lineages were nearly lost. After the war, karate survived thanks to American military bases, where soldiers learned and brought the art to the West. From the 1950s onwards, karate began to evolve into a sport. Rules were created, lethal strikes were removed, and the focus shifted to points and competition. This led to deep divisions: traditional karate versus sport karate, self-defense versus spectacle karate. With films, championships, and federations, karate has spread globally. Masters like Masoyama, Kyokushin, took realism to the extreme, while others focused on Olympic sports. In 2021, karate made its Olympic debut in Tokyo, a historic milestone. Today, karate exists between two worlds, the deadly tradition of Okinawa and modern global sport. But its essence remains the same: empty hands, indomitable spirit. Karate is not just a martial art. It is the story of a people who transformed repression into wisdom, silence into strength, and empty hands into an eternal legacy. This was the origin of how the history of karate began. But we will talk about all the styles separately and their creators in other videos on the channel. With that, we conclude another chapter of our journey, but the adventure continues. For the world is full of styles, stories, and legends waiting to be discovered. And if you're not already following us, we're unlikely to see each other again. But if you are, know that here you'll discover all the martial arts ever taught around the world, each one and its origins. Martial Origins invites you to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to give us that boost that only true warriors possess. And leave your comment below. Share this with a friend so they too can enter the world of martial arts, because perhaps the next video will reveal secrets that few imagine. Until the next journey,